Today we're diving into a true kitchen icon, Corelle dinnerware. You know them, you love them. For decades, these super lightweight, almost indestructible plates have been a staple in so many homes. But behind all that nostalgia, we've got to ask a pretty serious question. And let's just get right to it. Could the very dishes that have been passed down through generations, the ones a lot of us are probably still using for dinner tonight, actually be hiding a toxic secret? So first, let's just remember why these dishes are such a favorite. Corelle totally burst onto the scene back in the late 1960s, and it quickly became this huge household name because it was somehow both elegant and tough as nails. The secret sauce? It was a special material called vitrelle glass, basically 3 layers all bonded together, which made it incredibly strong but still super light. But what really made it iconic were those colorful patterns. Designs like spring blossom green, butterfly gold, and old town blue. They became part of the family meal, and as we're about to see, those beautiful decorations are right at the heart of this whole story. This is where the story takes a pretty sharp turn, thanks to the findings of an advocate named Tamara Rubin. After her own kids sadly suffered from lead poisoning, she started a mission, testing all sorts of household items with something called an XFRF instrument. It's a device that can detect the total amount of heavy metals, like lead, in a product. Well, her investigation eventually led her to vintage Corelle. And we're going to start with one of the most beloved patterns out there, Old Town Blue, with that classic, charming floral border. So when she tested the dark blue paint right there on the plate, the reading was just staggering. 18,200 parts per million of lead. Now, to give you some context, we're going to see in just a second how unbelievably high that number is compared to modern safety rules. And nope, this wasn't just a one-off. The iconic butterfly gold pattern, a staple in so many kitchens, tested even higher at 18,700 parts per million of lead in its decoration. So the really crucial thing to understand here is that this concern isn't about one bad batch. It spans multiple, super popular vintage designs. In this slide right here really puts it all into perspective. The current U.S. safety limit for lead in a brand new product made for a child is just 90 parts per million. 90! The levels found in these vintage Corelle patterns are literally hundreds of times higher than that. So with numbers that high, you have to wonder, what was the official response? Let's take a look at the company's side of the story. Okay, so here's the core of the debate. The advocates' testing measures the total amount of lead that's physically present in the paint. The company, on the other hand, has said that their manufacturing process actually encapsulated or sealed those decorations in glass. They argue that their dishes pass the safety standards of the time, which were based on something called leach testing, a method that checks if lead is actively coming out of the dish and into your food. Now, this whole debate between different testing methods could go back and forth forever. But then a really critical piece of information came out that kind of cuts through all the noise and gives all of us a clear answer. And this right here is the key takeaway. In response to all the questions from customers, Corelle's own representatives have advised that dishes made before 2005 should be used as decorative items only. I mean, that statement pretty much acknowledges the concern and gives us a very clear recommendation. Okay, so now that we know all this, what does it actually mean for the dishes sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now? Let's get into your very own Corelle field guide. The single most important date you need to remember here is 2005. Before then, lead was a really common ingredient used across the industry to make those vibrant, durable glazes. But after 2005, Corelle confirms its products are made lead-free. So basically, anything with a colorful pattern that was made before that 2005 cutoff is the stuff we're talking about. So how can you spot a high-risk dish? Well, first, if it was made before 2005 and has a colorful design where your food sits, that's a big red flag. But the most critical warning sign is visible wear and tear. If that pattern looks faded, or you can see scratches on it from years of use in dishwashing, that protective glaze might be compromised, and that's what increases the risk of lead exposure. And here are just some of those popular vintage patterns that have been identified as having high lead levels, including butterfly gold, spring blossom green, and the spice of life. If you recognize any of these from your own collection, it's definitely time to pay close attention. All right, but it's not all bad news. What Corelle is actually safe to use? The answer is pretty simple. Any pattern made after 2005, and most importantly, any plain white Corelle. The lead was only in the decorative paint, not the glass itself. So whether it's vintage or modern, plain white dishes like the classic winter frost white are considered lead-free. Okay, we've gone through the history, the science, and the company's own warning. So finally, what can you do about it? Here's a simple, actionable plan. It's really just a simple 3-step process. First, identify your patterns and try to figure out how old they are. Second, if you have any of those decorated dishes made before 2005, separate them from your daily rotation. And third, replace your everyday dishes with a confirmed lead-free alternative, like modern Corelle or those plain white versions, just for total peace of mind. Oh, and one last really important note. Let's talk about the mugs. A lot of Corelle's sets came with these matching ceramic or stoneware mugs. They're a totally different material than the vitrelle plates, and even modern mugs can sometimes contain low, legally lead-safe levels of lead. So for anyone who's really trying to go for a completely lead-free kitchen, that's just something to keep in mind. This whole discovery with Corelle really leaves us with a bigger question. It's a powerful reminder that the materials and safety standards from the past were just very different. It really makes you wonder what other beloved vintage items that we have in our homes might be worth taking a closer, more critical look at.